Okay, folks, section 5.6, misleading graphs. Now, you know that we've been doing graphs. We've been looking at graphs. We've been looking at ways of representing data, and we've been analyzing that data. Now, today we want to talk about some things that might be misleading about graphs. Sometimes, the intention behind people when they make a graph and whether or not it's misleading. Sometimes politicians or stores might try to change the way we perceive statistics, and so they may not falsify the information, but they may change a graph to make it look a certain way. Okay, so we need to always be able to look at graphs and determine what that information is truly saying. Now, if you look at these first two graphs, okay, you can see that in this graph, all right, in that graph, they don't tell us what this is, but they say that, in 1995 we had 22, okay? In 1996 we had 20. In 1997 we had about 19, and in 1998 we had about 16. So there's not a whole lot of change. It's definitely going down, but proportional, there's not a lot of change. But if we look at this graph over here, we're going to notice something about the y-axis. They put a little zigzag in there, and what they're saying is, you know what? We are going to lop off the bottom part of this graph down here, and we're just going to show you this part of the graph. Now, we're going to show you that because it exaggerates the differences so we can see them a little bit better, or we may want you to think that these are huge differences. Let's look at this first one. Do you see in 1998, just the look of this graph makes it look only 1/4 the size of 1995? Okay, now is that true? No. When you look over here at 1998, it's less than 1995, but it's not 1/4 of the size of 1995. This graph can be misleading if we don't recognize that they've locked off the bottom part of it. It exaggerates the change between the two, or between the years. Okay? Now if we go down here for example number 1, they're going to ask us to look at this. It says, use the graph below to compare the amount of chocolate eaten in Switzerland with the amount eaten in the United States. Well, if I look at the graph, forget about the sizes for a moment. Let's just look at numbers. Switzerland ate about 22, it doesn't say, pounds per person. 22 pounds per person, okay, of chocolate. The United States, I don't know, a little more than 10. We'll say 10.25. How about that? Okay, that's the U.S. All right. Now, that makes Switzerland about twice as much as the United States. But look at these graphs. If this is true, look how many times. That's 1 time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This graph makes it look like Switzerland eats almost 6 times as much chocolate as folks in the United States, when that's clearly not true. Okay? This graph, because it is broken down here, exaggerates the difference between Switzerland and the United States. So we need to be aware of that at all times. Okay? Let's scoot down to this next example here. Too far. Example number 2. It says, when the vertical axis, that's the y-axis, of a graph is broken, the scale distorts the data. Okay? Let me scoot down here a bit. I'm actually going to extend the page just so we can look at this example. It says that each of the line graphs below shows the wholesale cost in millions of dollars of cut flowers used by florist shops from 1990 through 1995. Compare the two graphs with the bottom two graphs. Describe the differences. Okay. Now, when I look at these two graphs, notice it has the zigzag here. That means it's exaggerating. It's almost like looking at this part through a magnifying glass, okay? And when we look at it on a graph that hasn't been broken, we can see that the proportion of change is not that much. I mean, they're still all above 400. Same thing over here with imported flowers, right? It exaggerates the change some, okay? But you can see that this kind of implies that we don't import a lot of flowers, right? But when we look at this, we see, whoa, there are a lot of flowers being imported, okay, as opposed to domestic flowers. Domestic flowers going down, imported flowers going up. All right, good job.